And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and it's time for another Commander Quick Brew from the Forgotten Realms set, starting out this time with Minsc, Beloved Ranger. A red, a green, and a white, so a 3-mana Naya Human Ranger 3/3. When Minsc, Beloved Ranger enters the battlefield, create Boo, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. So right out of the gate, obviously you can do hamster tribal with this. Yeah, I know, bad joke. The second ability though, pay X until end of turn, target creature you control has base power and toughness XX and becomes a giant in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. So obviously this is a ranger whose animal companion is a hamster, and the idea here being he turns the hamster into, basically giant growths the hamster, turns it into a bigger version of itself, and the hamster itself already has trample and haste. So that is significant. You really could go sort of almost a Voltron strategy here, except instead of your commander being the Voltron, it's the hamster that's the Voltron, because you're creating this 1/1 token that's already got trample and haste, and then you can just throw some more stuff on it, and the ability already built into your commander can then beef up your hamster token. So this is sort of a proxy Voltron strategy maybe, which is very interesting. You can't do any sort of a token doubling effect like parallel lives or anything like that. Won't really work because obviously it's a legendary token. None of that stuff works here. You can, however, blink your commander. If you're relying heavily on that token to be your attacker and someone kills it, now you can just blink your commander and it comes back. You could very easily make this so that you don't have to be casting your commander much at all, and you're always going to have that 1/1 hamster token available to you that you can use to attack with. So all the typical Voltron stuff could go in this deck. I really like Hero's Blade in this deck because when a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it, and that hamster token is a legendary creature. So your token's going to come in, it's immediately going to have the Hero's Blade attached to it, and it's going to get +3/+2. So now it's a 4/3 trample haste. So already that's pretty significant. And then of course with your commander's ability, you can beef up that power and toughness at any time. I mean, I know it seems silly, but that really is probably the best way to go with this. This to me is like I said, a proxy Voltron deck where the hamster is the Voltron and you just throw lots of stuff on it. You can beef it up with your commander, and if it dies, oh well. Obviously you can throw other creatures in here as well that want to be pumped up, like Swiftblade Vindicator would be a fantastic creature to essentially become the Voltron. Red and a white human soldier, 1/1 with double strike, vigilance, and haste. So now with our commander, we can make this a 4/4. So now double strike, vigilance, and trample as a 4/4 is much more impressive. That's probably the route I would go with this, is I would make it sort of a Voltron deck, but put a bunch of creatures in. Not a bunch, but definitely a few, like Swiftblade Vindicator, maybe Mirran Crusader, some creatures that have a whole lot of abilities stacked on them already, and then we can just easily increase their power and toughness, and then throw a few of the typical Voltron equipment in there as well. Also, don't forget that Minsc is turning our creatures into giants, so that's something you could also look at. So Calamity Bearer, if a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. That seems like an auto-include in this deck because whatever creature you might be attacking with, whether it be your token or your Swiftblade Vindicator, it's going to be a giant in addition to its other types. So it's going to deal double damage. Crush Underfoot might work. Choose a giant you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Realm Cloaked Giant, though, is probably my favorite one. 5 white giant with vigilance, 7/7. That's actually not very good. I suppose we could try and Voltron that if we wanted to. Doesn't seem great, though. The better part is the cast off or adventure part of it, which is a 3 white sorcery. Destroy all non-giant creatures. So you're going to put board wipes in this deck. This is probably one you're going to want to fit in there, because what our commander can do is turn all of our creatures into giants if we need to. He can use this ability on himself as well. So pay 1 mana, your Minsc becomes a 1/1 giant. Doesn't matter how big it is. The point is you're turning it into a giant so that when you cast your cast off, it's going to destroy all non-giant creatures and your creatures are going to survive. Basically, for every 1 mana, you're going to turn one of your creatures into a giant and save it from this board wipe. So I think that's a great fit in the deck as well. well. Very interesting commander. I think there's definitely a few ways you could go with it. I really like the idea of the proxy Voltron though. Next up today, Iymrith Desert Doom, 3 blue dragon, 5/5 with flying. Imrith Desert Doom has ward 4 as long as it's untapped. So as long as it's untapped, your opponents have to pay 4 more mana for the spells that target it. When Imrith deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So that's pretty basic. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Very interesting. So right away, just the first part of I'm going to attack with my commander. It's got flying, so it already has evasion. So I can just draw a card, right? You can just do that. I have a commander that sort of has pseudo hexproof. And if it connects, I can draw a card. That in itself is pretty good, but I don't think it's enough. I want to do more. The first thing I want to do is give my commander vigilance, okay? If we give our commander vigilance, then that way we don't have to tap it to attack. So it's always going to have the ward 4. It's not going to get turned off. And I really like that ward 4. It turns a Swords to Plowshares into a really bad spell. You know, paying 5 mana to exile a creature isn't very good. So I would probably chuck a couple of equipment in here. Obviously mono blue is not the best at giving vigilance, but it's easy to find equipments that can do that. So I would definitely throw a few in here that would give our commander vigilance. I suppose you could even put Angel's Trumpet in here to make all creatures have vigilance, but then all creatures also have to attack. So I don't know if you want to go down that route. More so though, I think the most interesting part of this is that last little part there. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. For me, I just want to be empty-handed so that every time I connect with my commander, I'm drawing 3 cards. I mean, that's really significant. And really, it's not that hard to be empty-handed. You're just casting spells. You just cast the spells that you have in your hand, or you can discard. You can also do a discard theme, and there's lots of different things you can do in a discard theme. I mean, just anything where you're taking advantage of discarding. Spell Shapers, there's lots of Spell Shapers that want you to be discarding, and then you can get advantage out of it. Mind Over Matter would be a great card in this deck. I mean, first of all, you can pitch to untap your Imrith so that it can get that ward 4 turned on. So Mind Over Matter is just a really incredibly powerful card, famously from the Tellurian Academy deck, and works fantastically in a deck like this where I can just throw all my cards away and then I attack with my commander, draw 3 cards. There's lots of effects, obviously, where you can be taking advantage of discarding. And then also you can throw in more effects like Pulse of the Grid and Slither Muse, where you are again taking advantage of the fact that your opponent is going to have more cards than you. I mean, certainly there's going to be at least one opponent that's going to have more than 0 cards. And then since we're discarding, we could throw Madness in there. We're doing it anyway, might as well take advantage of it. Maybe we could throw Octavia in there, Living Thesis. Octavia really wants us to have lots of instants and sorceries in our graveyard, so I think that's going to work as well. So definitely a lot you could go with here. I think for me, I would focus on, I'm going to not have a lot of cards in my hand, right? Because I want to get maximum advantage out of my commander. So before I attack on my main phase, I'm going to make sure my hand is empty. Then I'm going to swing and connect and draw 3 cards, because drawing 3 cards every time you connect with your commander is really fantastic. And lastly today, Vrondiss, Rage of Ancients. 3, a red and a green, Dragon Barbarian, 5/4. So very interesting creature type. You don't see a lot of dragons, walking around with clothes on and carrying an axe. But again, I think this is their idea of moving a creature type from the D&D world into Magic. And again, just like with the half-elf thing, I think this is probably a half-dragon. So, part dragon, part human, that sort of thing. Basically a humanoid dragon by the looks of them. Has Enrage, and this is an ability, of course, that we've actually seen before. Whenever Vrondiss, Rage of Ancients is dealt damage, you may create a 5/4 red and green dragon spirit creature token with, when this creature deals damage, sacrifice it. Very interesting. And then when you roll 1 or more dice, you may have Vrondiss deal 1 damage to itself. So let's talk about that last ability first. Obviously, the rolling is in reference to a lot of the cards that are coming out in this set, which talk about D20 rolling. I actually just double checked, and there actually isn't any Commander legal cards. There's a lot of uncards that roll 6-sided dice. There's none in legal Commander as of right now. So any of the dice rolling would have to be cards that were printed in this set. And I really don't think you want to go that route at all. I mean, you could, if you want, go with a dice rolling theme with this deck, I suppose. I don't know if there's enough cards to support it. It would be, okay. I mean, you're dealing damage to your own commander. That part isn't hard at all, right? If we're just talking about I want to deal damage to my commander, that's the easiest thing in the world. You just put any pinger in this deck and it'll ping your commander to make a 5/4 red and green dragon token. So for me, I'm ignoring that second ability completely. I don't think I mean, maybe, I haven't looked at the whole set yet. Maybe there's a couple of cards in there that fit the deck and also happen to be rolling dice. But I'm definitely not going to build my deck around that because I just think dealing damage to our commander is going to be the easiest thing in the world in a red and green deck. And because that Enrage ability is already an ability that exists in the format, that's the ability we want to build around, right? There's lots of other creatures in the game that have the Enrage ability, and we're going to want them being dealt damage as well. So we want effects that we can use on all of our creatures that have Enrage, not just our commander. So first off, those are dragon tokens we are making, which is important. Our commander is also a dragon, so any dragon support is going to be great in here. Dragon's Horde, for example, is going to be fantastic. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield in your control, put a gold counter on Dragon's Horde, and then you can remove a gold counter to draw a card. So that's our commander, and it's also the tokens we're making. So I think that's probably an auto-include in this deck. Any dragon support really would work, except possibly something like Dragon Tempest or Scourge of Valkis. Dragon Tempest, whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to a creature or player where X is the number of dragons you control. So that part actually doesn't work. I mean, we could use it, but as soon as it enters the battlefield, it's going to deal damage, and it has that when this creature deals damage, sacrifice it. And the Dragon Tempest isn't doing the damage the actual token is. So what's going to happen is it's going to enter the battlefield. Yes, you can shoot something, but then your dragon token immediately dies. Scourge of Valkis, same thing. When Scourge of Valkis or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player where X is the number of dragons you control. And again, these aren't optional. Neither of these are optional. You have to do it. So yes, maybe it is good. Your dragon token comes into play and you can shoot someone for a bunch of damage if you have a lot of dragons in play. Like, I suppose if you were going more of a dragon tribal with this deck, these cards would be good, but then your token would immediately have to be sacrificed. The Enrage ability, I think, is more where you want to build around. There's already lots. Dinosaurs, obviously. They're not dragons, so I don't know if you necessarily go dragon tribal with this. I mean, you could. I wouldn't. I would probably go more on the Enrage theme because you could put a lot of these really great dinosaurs that have the Enraged ability in here, and then we can just put lots of effects that are going to be dealing damage to our creatures. I talked about this in my original 10 deck ideas video. I had used Jacques Levert as the commander for that deck. Jared Carthelian is another commander that works well in this theme where you're just dealing damage to all your own creatures all the time and getting benefit from it. And there also is lots of creatures outside of the Enrage ability that are going to benefit from the damage, like Saber Ants or Hornet's Nest. And then, of course, Pyrohemia is probably going to be the best card in the deck. At the beginning of the end step, if no creatures are on the battlefield, sacrifice Pyrohemia. Pay 1 red. Pyrohemia deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So great for picking off your opponent's creatures too, but you can just put as much mana into this as you want. If you don't want to kill some of your smaller creatures, then you're only going to pay a little bit. Even if you just have your commander on the battlefield though, your commander has a 4 toughness, so we can pay 3 red. I'm probably want to do this on my opponent's end step. Deal 3 damage to every creature in play, probably kill a bunch of my opponent's creatures, and I'm going to trigger my commander 3 times, and he's going to be making 3 of those 5/4 red and green dragon spirit creature tokens for a total of 15 damage if I swing with them. I mean, obviously the downside here is, yes, you get these dragons fairly easily, but you basically get 1 swing with them and then they have to die. The one really interesting way around this though, and somebody had mentioned this about my Limb Duels Paladin deck. I had made a Limb Duels Paladin commander deck, even though he's not a legendary creature. You got to check out the video to understand what's going on there. But one of my regular viewers said, hey, where's Assault Suit? I think that works great in the deck. And Assault Suit is such a unique and interesting card, and it has an ability that I think is maybe one of a kind. 4 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, has haste, can't attack you or a planeswalker you control, and can't be sacrificed. That's very important wording. And because of the second part of the card at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of equipped creature until end of turn if you do untap it. That's the idea. The idea is I'm giving my opponents one of my creatures so that they can attack each other with it, because it can't attack you. And the can't sacrifice thing means I can give it to my opponent and they can't just sacrifice it so I lose it. That's really great if you have any creature that's going to be sacrificed through some effect. So for us, we can put this on one of our dragon tokens. It's going to be a 7/6 haste, can't attack us, and can't be sacrificed. So now when we connect with it, it can't be sacrificed, so that ability doesn't happen. And to make matters even better, we can start handing it over to our other opponents so they can smack each other with it as well. So I think that's a fantastic fit in the deck. Really interesting commander. Like I said, for me, I would completely ignore the dice roll part of it. It's really easy to just deal 1 damage to your commander or to any creature. I mean, Fiery Confluence, Fire Ants, Bloodfire Dwarf, I mean, you're in red, right? So doing this is not exactly difficult. Harbinger of the Hunt is probably a perfect fit in the deck because it is a red-green dragon and also has that ability to pay 2 in a red, and it deals 1 damage to each creature without flying, and it's repeatable. So that's probably a great fit in the deck. I think that part of the deck is definitely not something that you're going to have an issue with. But for me, that's the route I would go. I would go a little bit of dragon tribal or dragon support, let's call it. And then, of course, you got tokens, so could throw Parallel Lives or a Doubling Season in there as well to get extra value. Heck, you could even throw a Strionic Resonator in there to double up that triggered ability. And then I'm going to put a whole bunch more enraged creatures in here as well, so I could take advantage of those creatures also. But that is it for today. Another Commander Quick Brew from the Forgotten Realms set. Thanks for tuning in.